artificial intelligence replacing human jobs. It's the tech story that won't go away. But what if the future isn't about job elimination, but about working just 2 days a week? That's what Bill Gates is suggesting, and it's not quite what you'd expect.
That's such a radical shift from how we think about work today. What exactly did Gates say about this?
Well, in his recent interview with Jimmy Fallon, Gates made this fascinating prediction that AI would essentially take over most human tasks. But, and here's the key part, he specifically identified three fields that he believes will remain firmly in human hands.
Only three fields? That seems incredibly specific and kind of concerning for everyone else.
You know what's really interesting about his first pick? It's coding, which completely contradicts what many tech CEOs have been claiming about AI replacing programmers.
Hmm, that's unexpected. Why would coding survive when we're already seeing AI writing code?
Gates made this brilliant analogy. He compared it to asking whether we should stop learning multiplication just because computers are good at it. His point is that human coders need to understand the underlying systems to catch when AI is acting, in his words, crazy stupid.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's about understanding the fundamentals rather than just producing code.
Exactly, and here's where it gets even more interesting. The second field he mentioned was biology, specifically for research and scientific discovery. Though I have to point out that he never really explained why this wouldn't apply to other sciences.
Well, what about the third field? Please tell me it's something more accessible than coding or biology.
It's energy experts, because apparently that field is too complex to be fully automated. But here's the really wild part. For everyone else, Gates is talking about a future where we might only work 2 or 3 days a week.
That's such a massive shift. How would that even work economically?
Well, Gates suggests that AI will make things like expert medical advice and educational resources incredibly cheap and accessible. But you're right, it would require a complete restructuring of our economic system.
You know what this reminds me of? The predictions made during the Industrial Revolution about machines taking all our jobs.
That's a great historical parallel. But there's a crucial difference: the pace of change. The Industrial Revolution happened over generations, but these AI changes could happen within years.
So, what happens to all the people who aren't coders, biologists, or energy experts?
That's where Gates's vision gets really interesting. He's not suggesting mass unemployment, but rather a fundamental shift in how we think about work and productivity. Think about it. If AI handles most routine tasks, humans could focus on more creative and complex problems.
Though I have to wonder about fields that require emotional intelligence, like therapy or teaching. Those seem hard to automate.
Exactly right, and that's something Gates doesn't really address. There's this whole category of human centered professions that might be augmented by AI, but not necessarily replaced.
So maybe we're looking at more of a hybrid future?
Well, that seems to be the direction we're heading. And here's something fascinating: Silicon Valley has had this almost religious devotion to AI since at least 2017, but Gates is taking a more measured approach.
That's refreshing compared to the usual AI hype we hear.
And you know what's particularly interesting about Gates's predictions? He has a pretty solid track record. He accurately foresaw the impact of personal computers and the internet long before they became mainstream.
That certainly adds weight to these predictions. But what about the psychological impact of such a dramatic reduction in work hours?
That's a crucial point. We're not just talking about technological change, but a fundamental shift in how people find meaning and purpose. Our whole concept of identity is often tied to our work.
And what about education? Should we be preparing students differently for this AI enhanced future?
Gates suggests that AI will democratize access to education, but I think the bigger shift needs to be in what we teach. Instead of memorizing facts that AI can instantly provide, we might need to focus more on critical thinking and creativity.
That makes sense. Teaching people how to work with AI rather than compete against it.
Exactly, and that brings us back to Gates's point about coding. It's not about the mechanical act of writing code. It's about understanding systems and making informed decisions.
So, in a way, we're all going to need to become systems thinkers?
That seems to be the direction we're heading. And here's my take on why Gates highlighted those three specific fields. They all require complex systems thinking and the ability to make judgments based on incomplete information.
That's actually a really helpful way to think about future proofing our careers.
And perhaps that's the key takeaway from all this. The future isn't about finding AI proof jobs, but about developing skills that complement AI capabilities. It's about adaptation rather than resistance.
Though I have to say, that 2-day work week does sound pretty appealing.
Well, if Gates is right, we might all need to start thinking about how we'd spend those extra days off. It could be the biggest change to human society since the invention of the weekend.